Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Football Roundup podcast, where we talk all things football. As you can see, it's only me, Owen, today. James is not next to me today. That's because he is doing other things, and that's kind of where I want to start this show. I'd like to start this show off by kind of apologising for sort of the lack of updates, content, that kind of thing. I can assure you this won't happen again. He's been very busy doing different things. Busy time for both of us at the moment. So thought it's better for me doing something, you guys not having anything to listen to. So yeah, I'm here. My name's Owen, as you guys know, and today we're going to talk about Chelsea, which is quite requested in the media, social media platforms, that kind of thing. It's a very requested topic at the moment. So I want to start off with the ownership group at Chelsea. So one of the big questions is, who actually owns Chelsea? Chelsea is actually owned by Clearlake, which is led by Todd Boehly, a consortium led by Todd Boehly. They bought the club for about £4.25 billion, which in this day and age is a lot of money. But I believe there are clubs that are actually more valuable than this. So yeah, it's a lot of money, but also in this day and age, maybe not as much as you may think. Todd Boehly bought a Chelsea that was quite a successful Chelsea. I think Roman Abramovich, obviously, charges and embargoes and bans aside, left the club in a pretty good place, and I think fans are very sad to see him leave. Obviously, that had to happen due to legal reasons, different reasons that we won't get into. But yeah, he left the club in a very good spot. I think Todd Boehly took over a club that was also in the Champions League regularly, and now it's kind of not the case. So first, we're going to start with key figures of the sort of Clearlake consortium. So Todd Boehly is like the public face. He's the owner, sorry, the co-owner and the chairman of it. And then you've got Behdad Eghbali, who he's the Clearlake co-founder. He's the guy that's involved sort of day to day, the most influential, has to say on managers, players, that kind of thing. Gets himself involved in sort of most of the footballing decisions on a day to day basis. He'll probably be at the training ground the most out of all of them. And you've got a guy called Jose Felicao, who's the Clearlake co-founder, and you've got Mark Walter, who's an investor and a major sports owner. So many people thought that Todd Boehly was kind of the only owner. That's not the case. All those names that I've listed are also all involved in the sort of Clearlake consortium, Clearlake group. So that's the kind of start. The next part is the Chelsea model. What have Clearlake and Todd Boehly done, and what have they changed? What Roman Abramovich and his guys did. So one of the big things that they changed was that they tried to buy elite young players and slap them on very big contracts. Bear with me, I'm just going to get the contracts up. Right, so at the moment, they have no players with their contract expiring in 2026, which to me is crazy. That goes to show that they've slapped everyone on big long-term contracts. In 2027 is Tyreek George, who is already at Everton, I believe, doing quite well. He might move in the summer. That's one that's probably already done. In Spurs in 2028, you've got Mark Cucurella, you've got Trevor Chalobah, you've got Tosin, Gabriel Slonina, and that's it. So from those, Mark Cucurella has been at the club for a while. I think he signed when Graham Potter was here. Trevor Chalobah has been at the club for ages. Tosin Adebayo has been at the club for about 3 years. So they're sort of... And Gabriel Slonina, actually, I think, was signed when Graham Potter was here as well. So that's 3 players sort of in the shorter term, but have all been here for a while. Then you go the next year, to 2029, is Levi Colwill, Wesley Fofana, Josh Achampong, Axel Disasi, and Mark Guiu. We'll start with Levi Colwill. I think he'll be one that stays around Chelsea for years. I think, obviously, unfortunately, this season's been halted due to injury for him, but I think he's a very good centre-back, will be involved in many England squads to come. Wesley Fofana is interesting because his season's been stop-start of injury, can never really get the form, hasn't really looked that good when he's played. He might be one that potentially looks to go in 2029. Josh Achampong will definitely stay. I think he's been great from what I've seen. I think he came from the academy, so Chelsea definitely want to keep him. Axel Disasi, I think, is on loan at West Ham at the moment, doing very well, fighting for their lives, survival. So I think, although his contract expires in 2029, I think if West Ham stay up and stay in the Premier League, I believe he'll stay there, or he'll definitely move this summer, if that makes sense. And then the next one's Mark Guiu. We haven't seen an awful lot of Mark Guiu in a Chelsea shirt. I think signed 2 years ago, hasn't showed an awful lot. Went on loan to Sunderland, obviously got cut short because Chelsea sold Nicholas Jackson, which is another sort of indication of mismanagement and bad man management. So that one is a very interesting one. Haven't really seen what he can do. Obviously, got Delap and João Pedro in front of him. There's arguments that he should be playing over Delap because Delap hasn't quite done it in a Chelsea shirt yet. I know it's only his first season, but hasn't quite sort of come to fruition in a Chelsea shirt. But yeah, I think Marc Guiu will definitely be one that looks to potentially look for an exit door. Not even maybe even before 2029. And then we go to the next year, and then we have Malo Gusto, Romeo Lavia, Robert Sanchez, Benoit Badiashile, and Andre Santos. Malo Gusto is a very good player. I think is an example of good recruitment. Is a good right back. Obviously, Reece James having his injury worries, having a sort of consistent person who can sort of play there every week. Interestingly, Under Maresca was playing a little bit in the midfield as well, which was a bit of an odd one, but it seemed to work. He was getting results. But, yep, he might potentially go after 2030. He might be one that stays for a while. Romeo Lavia, I think, hasn't really shown what he can do in a Chelsea shirt because, again, another one whose injuries have sort of halted him big time. I think there was a stat the other day, which I believe may have changed now, but he's never completed 90 minutes for Chelsea, which is also a very shocking stat that I'm not sure Chelsea fans want to hear. So he might potentially go before that if Chelsea bring in someone better. Robert Sanchez is very sort of getting a lot of stick at the moment. Defence of Chelsea, the goalkeepers of Chelsea really aren't doing the business. I think playing out the back, he's not very good. He doesn't strike confidence in any defence. Attackers find it very easy to score past him. I think that's one area of big concern for the Blues. I think Chelsea really need to recruit a top-class goalkeeper in the summer and look to offload Robert Sanchez because I think they've got a very sort of decent backup in Philip Jorgensen. So I think they offload Sanchez and they keep Jorgensen. Then we have Benoit Badiashile, who's also been very stop-start. Had a bit of a run of games at the moment, but again, it's part of that defence that really strikes a lot of confidence into the attackers, if I'm being honest. So yeah, not an awful lot from him. I think he'll go before. And Andre Santos, who got increased minutes under Rosinia. Obviously, played under Rosinia at Strasbourg. So he was very lucky to get more minutes. But I think some of the signs that I've seen of him has been very good. So I think he'll stay at Chelsea for the long term. I think Chelsea want him to stay for the long term, and I don't think they'll really listen to many offers. Then we go to the next year in 2031. Pedro Neto, he will stay past 2031. Philip Jorgensen again. If he doesn't get the minutes, I think he'll go. Mudryk obviously had the ban, so I think he's just coming back out of his ban, I believe, so he will probably stay. Liam Delap will stay, bought in the summer, here for the long term, obviously, and Casido's just signed a contract extension until 2033, sorry. Then going into 2032, which is mental, Enzo Fernandez will stay. Well, actually, I don't know about Enzo Fernandez because I think if the project at Chelsea doesn't go anywhere in the next couple of years, I can see Enzo Fernandez knocking on the door of the exit and saying, no, I'm too good to be here. I'm the captain. I think I could see myself doing bits elsewhere, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, PSG, that kind of team. So he'll be definitely one to watch. Jamie Gittins hasn't really got going yet, signed in the summer. Jiro Hato. I really like Jiro Hato. Although he hasn't played well as of late, don't think anyone has. Nearly signed for Liverpool in the summer. I thought would have been a great deal for us. I think he was Ajax's youngest ever captain, so that's something to consider as well, that the leadership qualities are there. And you also have Alejandro Garnacho, which hasn't really set the world alight at Chelsea. It's divided a lot of fan opinion. Some people hate him, some people like him. Obviously, United fans hate him, so yeah, he will probably stay. I can't see him signing and leaving in the space of a year. That doesn't seem right. I don't think that's something that Chelsea would do. But I think it's definitely one to watch. Then we go into our final year, which is 2033. Cole Palmer, look, he's one that I think will probably push for an exit. Although publicly and in the media said that he's very happy at Chelsea, I think he'll be one that, like Enzo, if the project isn't going anywhere in sort of 2-3 years' time, will definitely push to move before his contract ends. So he's one to watch. João Pedro will be here for the long term. Esteval will be here for the long term. Asigo will be here for definitely a few more years. I can see him getting offloaded straight away. And yeah, I mentioned Casido in 2033 earlier. So what this kind of shows is that the FFP rules have been, got a lot stricter in the last few years. And Chelsea, some would call it clever, some would call it stupid. What they can do is they can spread the cost of the wages, the transfers, they can pay them all in installments. So what that means is, say they buy, I don't know, Esteval £50 million, but they sign him for an 8-year contract. They can spread that £50 million across 8 years, which to me is mental. £50 million across 8 years. And on the FFP for that year, all you're getting is 1/8 for £50 million, if that makes sense. So instead of on the books it's £50 million, on the books it's 1/8 for £50 million. On the books it's 1/8 of his 10-year contract. So it's a very bold sort of strategy from Clearlake and a bold strategy from Boehly, and it's something we hadn't really seen in the Premier League before sort of these guys came in. So I don't think it's worked very well. One thing with Chelsea is they have a distinct lack of leaders. You look at their sort of squad and you look at their sort of team sheets that come out, and always very young. Yes, they have the senior figures in Chalobah, Tosin, Sanchez. Yes, but they're not people that are going to win you a Premier League and get you consistent top four. I think by all means Chelsea are not a million miles away. I think if you sign a world-class goalkeeper and maybe one or two experienced centre-backs, I think could be there or thereabouts, because there's no doubt in their attacking ability. Their attacking ability is great. Although they struggled to score goals under Rafinha, their attacking ability is great. And yeah, I can see them. I can see them sort of, if they get this bit right, they can go on for years and years and years and years. And then another thing I want to mention about the whole buying players young and sort of keeping them for 8 to 10 years is there's always resale value there. I think United are starting to do this with the under 26 thing. If you buy a 26, 27-year-old player, in 5 years' time, the resale value is very, very slim, if any at all. So what this means for the sort of ownership, because again, fortunately for fans, owners aren't in it necessarily to make these clubs great, they're in it for their own pocket. So in an owner's point of view, why should I buy a 26, 27-year-old player who's coming towards the end, slap him on a 250, 300 grand a week contract, keep him for 3 years, and then by the time he's 29, 30, have to sell him on at a big wage, a big age, and no one will go near him. Whereas if I can sign a 18 to 21-year-old, sign him for 5 years, not only do I get him on a reduced wage, not only do I get 5 years worth of growth and performance, I also get a longer term sell-on value. So from a business point of view, it makes sense. And it does make sense sort of in a footballing point of view because Brighton have done it. But the difference with Brighton is there's no real expectation. I mean, they're having a great season at the moment, pushing for Europe. You know, I know it's an outside shot, but could still push for Champions League football. But I very highly doubt that will happen. But the problem with Brighton is there's no expectations. On a club like Chelsea, there's big, big, big expectations. And unfortunately, the fans don't give these players time, these owners time, these managers time they need to sort of succeed. Whereas if you look at Brighton, the amount of time that Fabian Hertz has had, the amount of time De Zerbi had, Potter had, that kind of thing, because their fans are patient, because they've come from being a championship side, then an established Premier League side, to then challenging for Europe. The fans are not expecting anything, so that's why these players thrive more at Brighton. Whereas when they go to the big clubs like Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, City, Arsenal, Real Madrid, they not necessarily fail, but they can't hack it as much at Brighton because there's a no excuse environment. It's a pressure cooker of an environment, and yeah, so that's the kind of resale value. And like I said to you before, I can understand it from a sort of business point of view, but from a footballing point of view, you need to get the mix between having the heavy hitters, the leaders, and then you need to have the sort of less experienced, the young players that you can potentially keep for 5, 10 years and sell on for longer. And one more point I'm going to add on that actually is these younger players don't learn unless they have experienced players behind them, in front of them. Sorry, you look at the class of '92 at United. I don't think they would have been as good as what they were if they didn't have the experienced players that they were learning off. You see it at Chelsea. You've got your João Pedros, your Garnachos, your Estevals, your Hatos, your Gittins, okay? Yes, great players, but who are they looking up to? Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer, Moises Caicedo, Trevor Chalobah. Okay, yes, great players, granted, great players, but not taking anything away from their sort of footballing ability. But what we are saying is there's no real leaders. I'll give an example of Liverpool, my club. You look at the centre-backs we signed, Jeremy Jacquet, Giovanni Leone, and those 2 young lads that come in from abroad. They look at Liverpool and they go, right, okay, Van Dijk's got a year or 2 left in his contract. He definitely won't be here after that. What they do have is the potential to learn off someone like Van Dijk. Credibility, the respect that Virgil van Dijk has, is allowing Liverpool to bring these centre-backs in, allowing these centre-backs to learn under one of the world's best centre-backs. You look at right wingers, you look at strikers, you look at the midfield. There's always leaders at that club to take these young players through. So, going back to my point, there isn't that at Chelsea at the moment. And of course, the only way you become experienced, the only way you become leaders is by getting experience and playing and being young. And I get that. Of course, I get that. What you need is experienced people above you to sort of guide you through. Because don't get me wrong, in professional football, there'll be tough moments where may not be playing, you'll be out of favour, you're playing bad, the crowd gets on your back, teammates get on your back, and you need the experienced leaders to take you through that sort of experience. So that's one thing I think Chelsea don't really have sort of an abundance of, and I think that's where they need to sort of go in the future. And I think in the next couple of transfer windows, they need to be investing heavily in sort of not going crazy on the experienced players, because that's how you start struggling for money and that's how you start overpaying. But you definitely get a better mix of experienced and young players. Excuse me. So the next thing I want to talk about is their multi-club model, their blue coat model. This is obviously come under a lot of fire at the moment. Blue coat is Chelsea and Strasbourg and how they're linked, and basically the frustration from the Strasbourg fans is everything that they have, they sign. They know that is in preparation for Chelsea. I mean, there's been 3 or 4 players recently that I think it's Valentin Barco, Samuel Smith, Amiga, obviously Rosenior, the manager. They're all coming into Chelsea. They're 4 players that have all been signed for Strasbourg that they know are going to Chelsea. And the frustration is like from them is they're kind of taking their club out of it. So whereas like if you're a fan of that club, you want the club to be put first. Strasbourg feel that Chelsea are being put first and they're sort of being put to the side. Like look at Rosenior. Of course, no, I don't think anyone blames Rosenior. If you get the chance to go be a Chelsea manager, why wouldn't you? Okay, there's always be that regret if you never did. So I understand that, but their frustration is why change? They're doing really well. You know, they've got some really good young players. They've got some really good experienced players. They're finally doing well as a club, and all of a sudden, it's all ripped apart. Amiga, Barco, Samuel Smith. Okay, Martial Godot. Okay, great signings, but they know they'll be in Chelsea in the next year's time. So I mean, Gary O'Neill's doing a great job there, but they just know they always have one hand tied behind their back. So their fans have been very vocal with their protests and they're sort of making their thoughts known. And then obviously Chelsea fans are making their thoughts known as well. They don't believe these Strasbourg players, this model works. They don't think it's good enough to beat Chelsea. They don't think that what they're doing is very good. So they've also voiced their opinions, doing protests before games, doing different bits and bobs before games in protest of the owner. Going at Eghbali, like I said, making decisions. So, yeah, the multi-club system for me doesn't really work. I think it's great to have players that you need to go on loan, go there, but it only works if both sides are happy. And at the moment, both sides are sort of not as happy as they could be. Anyway, I'm going to move it on a little bit to their sort of excessive spending. I'll get to the actual total in a minute, but the spending under Todd Boehly has been nothing shy of crazy. Been crazy. I mean, you look at the first summer that Todd Boehly had, and to be fair, in this summer he signed experienced players and it went wrong. So I can kind of understand why he's gone for a different model. So he signed Raheem Sterling from Man City. Didn't really work out. First 2 years, yes. Last 2 years, no. Kalidou Koulibaly, great player at Napoli. Didn't really work out at Chelsea. Had flashes of good games, but nothing crazy. Yeah, Marc Cucurella, good player. Wesley Fofana has done okay. And Aubameyang was just a little bit of a car crash of a signing. So first summer didn't do really well. So that's kind of why he decided to go a little bit of a different route. And then also the next thing is managerial instability. So the managers he's had since he took over, manager who was there in his first summer was Thomas Tuchel. They fell out over players. He was then sacked. Graham Potter, he had about a year, went sour, was sacked. Frank Lampard did okay, obviously was interim, then left. Pochettino did okay, got them sort of back to a stable sort of point, top 4, ended up getting sacked because what happened? Fell out of owners. Enzo Maresca did really well, won the Club World Cup, won the Conference League. What happened? Got sacked. Who comes in? Liam Rosenior. What happens? He gets sacked. So I just think they don't give these managers enough time. I think there's too much mismanagement with their sort of higher ups. I think they're not really looking into the right sort of managers and sort of what they need and what they think Chelsea need going forward. So yeah, I think that's another big sort of complaint with Chelsea fans. More complaints with Chelsea fans are sort of Chelsea becoming a hedge fund. Fans often feel players are treated like financial assets rather than footballers, which is true. They're milking the money. I'd imagine ticket prices have gone up, which they have everywhere, but fans are getting milked for money. Merch is going up, experiences are going up. And then another thing, like I said before, is the too many young players thing. Too big of a squad, too little leadership, and poor dressing room balance. All three things I've said before that fans are voicing their opinion on. And then the next thing they've said is no clear football identity. too many sporting directors, too many signings, too many players changing. I mean, I'll give an example of this. The bomb squad last summer. There was videos of sort of Axel Disasi and different players that were being axed out of Chelsea were at a separate sort of training ground, training alone, waiting for them to get moves. That's not how you run a football club, unfortunately. So, yep, no football identity, lack of football identity. Stamford Bridge sort of being, unfortunately for a club like Chelsea, Stamford Bridge isn't big enough for them to succeed anymore. And I love Stamford Bridge. It's a great stadium, been there a few times. It kind of has that old-fashioned sort of feel to it, a great feel to it. But it needs urgent improvement. And unfortunately, Clearlake, Eghbali, Boehly haven't really done anything to sort of progress that forward. So that's where there's frustrations come with that. They need a new stadium. They need big, or if not a new stadium necessarily, they need bigger capacity for the revenue. Like you look at Man United, the stadium they're building, you look at Anfield, the way it's been sort of expanded on. The revenue that brings allows you to go and buy players, allows you to go and improve everything, improve the experience, improve everything around the stadium. So they need to improve that stadium big time. And then also the last sort of concern for the fans is the emotional disconnect between players and fans and owners. Because what they had with Abramovich was, despite his flaws, he was obsessed with winning. Many supporters feel that Blue Co feels obsessed with the portfolio management and how their image is kind of, comes across. So that's where a disconnect comes, the winning side and the sort of image side. And I get that, because if you know that your team are obsessed with winning and your team won't do everything to win on the pitch and your owner won't do everything, they won't invest, they won't invest is a strong word, but they won't go the extra mile to win, that's when the disconnect comes. The last few managers that have come in really haven't got the fans going. So, yeah. So, we've talked about all the negatives. We're now going to talk about a few of the positives that have come out of this sort of Eghbali, Boehly, Clearlake reign. So, one success is Cole Palmer. I think they signed him for a cut fee. I think been one of their best signings, one of the better signings in Europe over the last few years. So he's been a big success. And then the next thing is the academy, the younger squads, along with long-term planning, the chance for kids to get sort of the academy kids to get first team minutes. That's been a big plus, which I think a team like Chelsea always needs. Like academy kids coming through. I think the managers coming through need to be able to use those academy kids. And then the next thing is their women's team. I believe it was just announced that their women's team are going to play all their games at Stamford Bridge going into next season. They've put more money into the women's team, which is great to see. I think for all aspects of the club, it's great to have a good women's team and a good men's team. So fair play to that. And then, to be fair, the Bluecoat sort of Strasbourg sort of thing has gone well. I guess some of the signings they've had from Strasbourg, Chelsea have done okay, and I think having a multi-club model, despite the flaws, has been very good for them. I think it doesn't work long term, but I think it has been good. Let me think of anything else that I've written down here. Here we go. So I've written down a sort of comparison under Abramovich. So what Roman Abramovich had that sort of Boehly and Eghbali and Clearlake don't is that it was ruthless, but it was clear. It was elite recruitment. It was short-term success, and it was the trophies that came fast. Yes, Todd Boehly's won the Club World Cup and the Europa Conference League, but in terms of the sort of overall short-term success, they don't really see that. They have to wait years and years and years and years to sort of see the success. So that's why the fans loved Abramovich, because he was ruthless, he was elite, he had short-term success. So he knew what it was to be a Chelsea owner. He knew that these fans wanted trophies now, success now. He knew that the fans didn't care about 10 years time. He didn't care. All right, the fans didn't care. He didn't care. All he cared about was winning now. So fair play to him. And then obviously the Boehly and Clearlake, it's longer term strategy, financial engineering, youth focused rebuild, and more patience demanded. But unfortunately, like I've said, at a club like Brighton, you get the patience. At a club like Chelsea, you not get the patience. So it doesn't really work. It can work, but only if you get the fans on side. So sort of some clearing thoughts, some sort of final verdicts. So Todd Boehly, the argument with Todd Boehly is he may be able to make Chelsea sustainable for the next 10, 20 years. And that could be good, because obviously what you don't want is to go into financial troubles. You don't want to be sort of involved in all that. So to be sustainable for the next 20 years could be good. Whereas Abramovich had the sort of charges against him, had the transfer bans, had the academy embargoes. So yeah, I think closing thoughts for me. Two things: Boehly's long-term planning and the disconnect between fans and the protests. That's three. You know what I mean? So, disconnect between fans has been real. I think the fans want him out, the ownership out. I don't think anything will change in the fan base until the ownership get out. I think the long-term contract thing really doesn't bode well with some fans, and the attitude to succeed isn't there. Well, it might be there, but it hasn't been shown. So they're the three things that I think Chelsea fans are frustrated with, and I think the fans will continue to protest until these things are dealt with and sort of cleared up. So the future-proofing, the stadium, and the fan protest, multi-club system, they're the big things that I think Chelsea fans have the sort of issues with. But like I said, thank you all so much for listening. It's going to be on Spotify, it's going to be on YouTube. As you can see, it's going to be a sort of visual episode this week. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Both of us will be back next week. Thank you all for listening and watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.